Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, we are from English Language and Teaching Department, and we are the second group of Psycholinguistics consist by two members here, namely Fezrafa Ilmanov and me, Nur Faizah. We would like to explain some interesting material about psycholinguistics. So, in this section, we have two interesting topics. First, it is about language and worldview, and the second one, it is cognitive process. We're gonna discover the relation between psychological as a science and also the linguistic in the language learning. Without any further ado, for the first material will be delivered by my friend for Fezrafa Ilmanov. Time is yours.
Language and worldview. What is a language? Now, language is a tool to convey meaning through communication, to express our thought and ideas. Language spoken by the speaker itself has a message that is carried and indicated for the recipient. For the recipient, Crystal lists 8 functions of language. 1. The primary purpose of language is, of course, to communicate. 2. We can also use it to express emotions, for example, by sweating or complimenting someone. 3. For social interactions, for example, by saying bless you when someone sneezes, or curse words whenever there is something that insults you. 4. To make use of its sounds, for example, in various children's games, for example, or we could say uh, vocal or maybe vocabulary games. 5. To attempt to control the environment, for example, magical spells. 6. To record facts. 7. To think with. 8. Finally, to express identity, for example, chanting in demonstrations. We could say party elections or something sorts. Yeah, we can take it for examples from there. According to Rabia, they elaborate that language is formed by structure, which is made up of set and patternable elements. Although systematic implies that a language is a single structure, it actually consists of many subsystems that differ from one another. I'm sorry. The language subsystem is made up of 1. Phonology, 2. Morphology, 3. Syntax, and last but not least 4. The lexicon. Fantini states that the worldview of an individual is shaped by his language. In other words, the language we acquire influences the way we construct our vision of the world. Languages are more than just a means of communication, after all. They are paradigms of worldview. Boroditsky supports the writings of the American linguist Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee Wolfe to claim that different languages may impart different cognitive skills, which will be discussed in the next video. Attempting to establish evidence to prove that speakers of different tongues may also think differently. Understanding of language in the world differs to two types: linguistics and also psychology. Underhill extended Humboldt's ideas in pattern, stating that the world is processed in the mind through language. An individual's viewpoint is formed by his language, which is, of course, the languages we speak have a significant impact on how we think and see the world. Language speakers differ in how they describe events and, as a result, in how well they recall who did what, who's who, something like that. English speakers may have a tendency to express things in terms of a person or individuals doing the action. This part will be discussed by Faizah Go on, Faizah. Time is yours.
Hello, I am Nur Faizah. I'm the second person teacher in this section. So, in the second section, I'm going to explain about cognitive process and how cognitive process relate with language learning or language acquisition. So, cognitive process is the process of obtaining and understanding information from the surrounding environment. Cognitive processes include way humans transfer information among the different memory stores in the brain, and cognitive process or cognitive mechanism determine how we pull words from the mental lexicon, and still others explain how we assemble these words into a structural representation. However, our psychological processes, according to Fromkin, Redman, and Himes on 2018, are also used to produce and understand utterance. So here, the psychological processes related with the brain when we learn to adapting, when we try to understanding about language, there is an action of the brain. And there are several steps or several processes in the brain when we try to acquisition of the language. Here are the basic mental processes when we learn about language. So, there are three basic mental processes. First, it is about the sensation, the second one is attention, and the third one is perception. The sensation, according to definition, the initial experience of a stimulus or an object registered by a particular sense organ. It relates with our organ or our body when we try to capture with our visual, with our eye, when we try to hear or listen with our ear, when we try to get in touch with our skin. It must be sense of organ to capture all of the information around us. After that, all the information will be run into the second processes in the attention. Attention is a process through which we select and focus in a certain information by filtering all of the information in our brain. And after that, we're gonna have the third process, it's perception. It is the part of the brain that interprets, understanding, and also comprehend with our what we feel, what we hear, and taste and touch into the image to be understand. This is interpret and also can divide and can decide how the next action will be choose. And two major theories of language learning, it is behaviorism and mentalism. Behaviorism theory of language learning. This learning theory state that behavior are learned from the environment. When we learn from the environment, there is no brain part here. And they say that innate or inherited factors have very little influence on behavior. According to Van Patten and Benetti in 2014 in Ar-Rahman, the environment is the most crucial factor in the learning process, and it consists of developing response to environment stimuli. All this behaviorism theory just based on how the stimulus and also the organ to capture all of the moment, all of the information here. And there is no action from the brain, there is no related with the brain, and usually in the behaviorism theory, also just focus on what can we learn about the speaking skill. And the second theory, it is mentalism theory of language learning. According to Delay and Bird in Mohammed 2019, they elaborate that there is a place in our brain that centralizes and the mental process of language learning input. Mentalists, or some others called as cognitivists, believe that there is some device named language acquisition device that is placed in the human brain to process the language and is only created for human beings. LAD, the pioneer of the LAD is Chomsky, and Chomsky also agreed that when we try to understanding, when we learn about some language, the brain is the main organ to capture and to understand all of the language learning. So, from the LAD, language acquisition device, we can conclude that when we try to understand the language learning, it must be part of a brain process. So, the cognitive processes include perception, recognition, imagining, remembering, thinking, judging, reasoning, problem solving, conceptualizing, and planning. All these cognitive processes can emerge from human language, thought, imagery, and also symbols. Therefore, in language acquisition, Cognitive processes help humans to create and understand grammatical and meaningful of full sentences by using appropriate vocabulary and grammatical structure. In addition, cognitive processes also help humans understand utterance, word, text, and others. Therefore, another side of the cognitive, it must be cognitive skill, are often divided into 9 different categories, and cognitive skill also can be the main strategy when we want to increase our strategy to learn some language learning, because in the cognitive skill there are some related each other, seems like sustained attention, selective attention, divided attention, long-term memory, and then working memory, or we can call it as short-term memory, and then logic and reasoning, auditory processing, visual processing, and then processing speed. It must be related with our language learning strategy because it depends on this cognitive skill. And if you have some lack or some disadvantage of learning language, you can't repair all of this cognitive skill, and you can be must be easier to language to speak up and or to capture all of the language. As the language acquisition also related with cognitive skills, so you can choose and you can decide how can we do in the language learning, so you can be easier and you can understand the language as soon as possible. Okay, that's all we can do for you today. I hope it can bring a lot of impact for us. I apologize if we do some mistake. See you later on. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.